I saw a skinwalker on the 4th of July in Arizona. I'd like to begin by starting to explain the setting on this 4th of July, to which my best estimate was about 6 years ago, back when I was around 12 years old. That year, 4th of July was at my Uncle Lance's, located in Surprise, Arizona. It was very dark that night. It was just a small gathering that year because the other families had different 4th of July parties to attend, so it was just my mom, dad, grandma, uncle, 2 younger sisters, and I who attended. My uncle's land isn't huge, but I would say it was about an acre. We started off lighting some legal fireworks and eating hot dogs. My uncle, dad, grandma went inside about 9 p.m. My mom had the great idea to go check out the chicken coop, which was about 150 to 200 feet from the house. We both started walking out to the coop. My mom carried my baby sister, who was around 1 at the time, with her and me and my other sister at age 8. I had my phone light on and started walking side by side next to my mom. We were about 20 feet away from the coop until we saw this thing about 15 feet in front of us. It was a whitish gray looking thing on all fours, but its 2 front limbs appeared to be long arms leaned up on, like a chimp. It looked exactly like the rake from the creepypasta, with white eyes and hints of red. I would say if it stood on its hind legs, it would be at least 7 feet tall. It just stared at us while being still. My 8-year-old sister ran, so I turned around to see, and she was already halfway back to the house. I turned back to see the same terrifying creature. I noticed my mom getting closer now, standing about 6 feet away from it. I ran to her and yanked her arm. She seemed to snap out of it, and we ran. I would like to mention it was staying still during this whole interaction. It seemed shocked to see us. I turned back midway back to the house, and it was gone. By the time we got to the house, my sister was already telling my dad what had happened, and of course they looked at us crazy, saying it must have been a coyote. I've seen a coyote before, and it was far from that. It was a quiet ride home. My mom later tells me she got closer because she couldn't believe her eyes, and once she locked eyes with it, it felt as if she was in a trance. My mom, sister, and I all agreed it looked exactly like the crawler that pops up if you look up Skinwalker in Forest on the internet. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I ran away when my sister did. I'd like to think God watched over us that hellish night. I also wonder if that was the perpetrator that had been unlocking the coop and killing chickens, as there was a couple incidents that had taken place a month or 2 beforehand. I promise this is a real story. Time loop. Something happened a few years back that I can't shake and would really love some kind of explanation as to what the hell happened, as it's played in my mind ever since. Let me just clarify before I start, I'm completely sound of mind. I just want some closure, I guess. So here it goes. I've always been into the paranormal, and as a kid I was completely fascinated by it. And I have found over the years, the more open to it you are, the more downright bizarre some of the stuff you experience is. This tops my list of weird experiences. This happened about 7 years ago. My sister came to my flat one night after work. She finished work at about 5:30 to spend a bit of time with me, as we had both been working like crazy and hadn't had time to catch up. It was just the 2 of us, and she suggested having a game of cards with our coffees, something we had always done since kids. It's a favorite pastime in our house. Once I had gotten the cards out and started shuffling them, she asked me to look at the time on my phone, as she had work the next morning at 7 a.m. and needed to be home at a reasonable time. I told her it was 6:10 in the evening, and she said, okay, well I'll have to be leaving around 8:45 p.m. to get my uniform washed and dried, so keep an eye on the time for me. I agreed, and we started playing a bit of rummy to start with. Now, we weren't drinking alcohol or taking any drugs, we were just having a relaxed game of cards, chatting about work and guys, the usual stuff I suppose. Everything was normal. We played cards for what I felt was like 2 hours easy. I mean, you can't mistake the length of time when you have about 16 to 18 hands of rummy, and we're in the early stages of playing a game of poker, having got bored of the other game. Out of nowhere, I remember having the weirdest feeling come over me, like the light in the room dimmed, and I distinctly felt an electrical cackle start at the bottom of my spine and shoot all the way up to my skull. I physically jolted upright. The sensation was so intense. I looked at her, and she was looking at me all wide-eyed and silent, like she knew something was up. I blurted out, "Something is wrong, really very wrong." Without blinking or reacting in any other way, she says to me, "Look at the time," which I thought was the weirdest response. I picked up my phone and I looked at the time. A mixture of shock and dread creeps over me. "This can't be right," I mumbled out loud, getting up to turn on the television to see what time it is. She's looking at me like, what the hell is going on? What is it? What's the time? She asks me again, and I just repeat that it can't be right as I switch on the TV. The time flashes up in the corner of the screen, and it said 6:29. She sees it and is now just as freaked out as I am. That can't be right. Did your phone say the same time? I showed her the screen, I pull out a laptop to check the time, and even got a watch out of my drawer to see if they all matched, and sure enough they did. There was no possible way that we had sat playing cards for just 20 minutes. I asked her how long she thought we'd been playing, and she said a couple of hours like myself. We just sat there in a bit of a fog, like what on earth had just happened. We tried to discuss it, but we couldn't make any sense of it. To be honest, it just felt uncomfortable. Even to this day, to talk about it doesn't feel right. She breaks the silence with a joke, something like, "Oh well, at least I have another couple hours to chill with you." We just tried to forget about it. I just wondered if anyone's ideas on what this was. Sorry if it's a long post. Carbon monoxide detectors worked fine, and I had frequent gas checks, policy by the landlord. I teleported? One thing I've always done while driving is gauge where I am on landmarks and not signs. Just anything out of the ordinary I see, I'll know exactly how far I've gone and how long until I get there. Well, I live in Alaska, and I was driving to pick up my sister from the airport about an hour away. Around midnight in the middle of winter, it's pitch black and there's not many landmarks I base myself off of on this drive, but there is this one in particular. Every winter, next to an on-ramp, there's this single spruce tree that is lit up with Christmas lights. Every time you pass it, you'll notice it. There's no other lights, especially being in the middle of winter. It sticks out like a sore thumb. Well, I pass it and make a mental note of knowing where I'm at, what time it is, and how long it'll take me to get to the airport. Well, I keep driving, and about 10 minutes later, I pass the tree again. Time has changed since the last mental note, but for some reason, I don't remember the last 10 minutes of driving. But I know I already passed this very specific tree. It shook me up so bad I had to pull over and collect myself. I just found the sub and didn't realize there were so many others with similar experiences. Still fucks me up to think about today. Car crashed, but didn't. So yesterday after band practice, I was driving to get my mom from work at night around 9 p.m. When I was driving through a really dark and crammed back alley, everything was going smooth. I wasn't drunk or high. I'm not mentally ill in any way, I swear. All of a sudden, I heard a large crash sound and a super unmistakable beam of light, like I had been T-boned, but I wasn't. Everything automatically went back to normal. I was on the road again, no cars were around me. When I got home from picking up my mom, I checked my car for scratches, marks, bumps, and it was perfectly fine. This morning I asked my guitar player to send me the recordings of our practice. I had listened to them in completion with him yesterday many times. I knew exactly what happened. There was a chunk of the practice absolutely missing. I said, "Hey, where's the other half of the recording?" And he said, "What do you mean? You had to leave practice early yesterday to get your mom from work." I almost got nauseous. That's impossible. I had left late, I was tight on time. Did I hop into a reality where I left earlier to get my mom, ultimately avoiding the car crash? Did I die? Now, this one's written like it's fake. I'm gonna be honest, I think this one's fake. Sorry if I butcher the pronunciation. 7 missing in Malpais National Monument in the past 20 years. I asked Google Bard to pull up a list of all the people who have gone missing in Malpais. I asked Bard this because I had an experience there where I almost went missing in a cave because my friends and I separated in the bottom of this enormous miles-long cave system called Big Skylight. Then I heard music and had this overwhelming urge to follow it. I ended up crawling like a maniac worm down a tiny 1 foot by 2 foot or less opening, and I am not small. I went about 50 feet following this music before I snapped out of it. It was so tight I couldn't use my arms and had to slowly pull myself back out, using my heels a few inches at a time. I and other friends have had very creepy things happen here. It's also a naturally very dangerous area. The name in English translates to the bad country. Lots of magnetism, so batteries, electronics, and compasses are not reliable. Airplanes aren't allowed to fly over. There are no trails because the ground is very hard. The rocks ruin shoes very fast and you cannot bring dogs. You follow these big rocks, and they are over 100 feet apart, and you cannot rely on them for night navigation. I've only been comfortable going there at night because I can navigate by the constellations. It's actually the only way to get around at night there. This is what I asked Google Bard. Can you list all the people who have gone missing in Malpais? Check the history as far back as you can go. This is the reply. Sure, here's a list of people who have gone missing in Malpais National Park. James Chapman and Crystal Tuggle. Kevin Kaufman, James Miller, Christopher Moss, Michael Smith, John Smith. The first 2 people on the list, James Chapman and Crystal Tuggle, went missing in 2002. They were on a day hike in the monument when they disappeared. Their remains were found in 2010. The next person on the list, Kevin Kaufman, went missing in 2006. He was on a solo hike in the monument when he disappeared. His remains have never been found. The next 4 people on the list, James S. Miller, Christopher L. Moss, Michael R. Smith, and John F. Smith, went missing in 2008, 2011, and 2012 respectively. They were all on solo hikes in the monument when they disappeared. Their remains have never been found. It is important to note that not all people who go missing in El Malpais are never found. Some people are found alive and well, and some people are found dead. However, the majority of people who go missing in the monument are never found. There are a number of reasons why people go missing in El Malpais. Some people get lost, some people get injured, and some people can get into accidents. However, there's also a possibility that some people who go missing in the monument have been foully met. The disappearance of James Chapman and Crystal Tuggle, and the disappearance of Kevin Kaufman, James S. Miller, Christopher L. Moss, Michael R. Smith, and John F. Smith are all unsolved cases. The National Park Service is still investigating these cases, and they're asking for the public's help in solving them. My dad's life was saved by a man in the glitch. My dad was saved by a man from an accident site, but he doesn't remember the incident happening at all. In fact, he says he never left his house that day. This is from 10 years ago. I was in school and used to live in a small town in India. My dad had a business for which he had to frequently travel to the national capital. The only train that would arrive back in town within the same day from the capital would arrive in the nearest city 20 miles away by 10 p.m. So this one time, he was coming back from the city after arriving from the capital. My dad's brother was also in the same train but decided to come back home in a bus. And since my dad had taken his scooter to the train station, he was going to ride that back home. There was a neighbor's kid who asked my dad for a ride back home, and my dad agreed. There were no streetlights working that day. It was very dark and the area is full of industrial vehicles. Unfortunately, there was a big trailer parked on the main road diagonally. With no streetlights and a speed of 50 to 60 miles an hour, my dad's scooter crushed right into the trailer, and the front of the scooter was demolished. It was a horrible accident. The neighbor's kid was lucky and magically safe. Didn't get a single scratch on him. Some vehicles kept passing by, but no one stopped to help. Then came a big black SUV. A man in his late 30s stepped out with the neighbor's kid, helped to put my dad in the car's back, and took him to the nearest hospital. Meanwhile, my uncle's bus was passing by the accident site and he recognized the scooter was my dad, so he left immediately for the nearest hospital to check if anyone's admitted him. My uncle met the man who helped my dad, asked for his name and where he was from, thanked him for his help, and then the man left. The doctor said if that person hadn't brought him to the hospital, he would have died of blood loss. My dad was in the ICU for 25 odd days. He recovered in the next 4 to 5 months and really wanted to thank the man who helped. Since my uncle had already asked for his name and place, my dad asked around and one of our relatives happened to know the man since their wife and that man were from the same town. My dad and mom went to meet the man and he had the same name, same place of stay, same car, and said thank you for bringing these flowers and sweets, but I don't remember helping you at all. In fact, the date you're mentioning, I wasn't out of my house at all that day. We were so spooked and for some time we kept thinking this had to be a joke or something, but my uncle confirmed that he saw the same exact man. This had to be the biggest glitch of my life. To date, we don't know who saved my father. I let a woman cross the road only to see her again within 10 minutes heading the same direction in a different area. I can't explain what happened today, and I've never came across anything like it in my life. I literally can't stop thinking about it. Today I was leaving home from work after a meeting and driving home on my normal route. Before anyone asked, yes, I was sober and no, I wasn't under the influence of any drugs. I have no mental health issues and I wasn't under any abnormal stress. Anyway, I was coming to a turnoff on the road and there was this car in front of me that had stopped to let traffic pass. This is a popular crossing spot for people trying to skip the road. As I came to a stop, I noticed a woman wanting to cross. She stood out to me instantly as she was carrying a Tesco bag at a weird angle. Instead of holding it by the strap, she had the opening curled up and was holding it out from her chest. She appeared in her mid-50s and was wearing a woolly hat, parka jacket, and the hood up. She hurt my heart a little. As you could tell, she didn't have much money and had a sad expression on her face. I waved my hand to signal for her to go ahead and cross in front of me. She gave a gentle nod to me. I thought nothing more of it until I traveled around 10 minutes in the direction of which she was coming from. As I pulled to a set of red lights, I put on my handbrake and someone caught my eye. To the left of my vision, it was the same exact woman. Same clothing, carrying the same bag, heading in the same direction she was originally heading towards. This happened at 2:30ish p.m. and it's now 10 p.m. I can't stop thinking about it. It would be almost impossible for her to get there ahead of me via means of transport or walking. I know the buses that pass this route and none of them pass me. I've thought that maybe she could have caught a ride from someone, but again, I would have been ahead of them, and to get exactly where I spotted her the second time, you'd have to go around yourself adding 20 minutes extra journey time. I'm a skeptical person, so I told my wife and she just kinda laughed it off and didn't take it seriously. Anyone have any ideas or similar stories? I'm really trying to make sense of this for my own sanity. This was a comment from him. I've lived at the top of this road for 35 years. I know every shortcut by foot. There's literally no shortcuts by car. It wasn't possible for a car to overtake me with her in it, as it's single file and an extremely busy road. I'm still trying to understand what I saw. My wife said maybe she has a twin. I doubt her twin would have been carrying the same exact bag, held it in the same exact way with the exact items in it. I was able to see plastic juice bottles when I first spotted her. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll respond to as many as I can. Have a good rest of your day.